Thank you for joining our release overview. We're going to be doing an overview of the Point version 9.6, which is coming out this month, July of 2017. Now, before we get started, we always need to go over the legal disclaimer. So the information presented is confidential and proprietary to Calyx Technology Incorporated, doing business as Calyx Software or Calyx, and may not be disclosed without the permission of Calyx. The purpose of this PowerPoint presentation is to provide information rather than advice or opinion. It is accurate to the best of the speaker's knowledge as of the date of the presentation. To the extent that this presentation contains any examples, please note that they are for illustrative purposes only, and any similarity to actual individuals, entities, places, or situations is unintentional and purely coincidental. In addition, any examples are not intended to serve as legal advice. No part of this presentation may be modified, printed, or presented without permission of Calyx. Okay, let's go ahead and start looking at this release. This release, the new and updated features are going to cover the Uniform Closing Data Set Export, better known as UCD, HMDA requirements for collecting data, and then there are some other fixes and enhancements that we will be looking at. We're going to look at what screens have been updated so you'll know specifically what screens you're going to be seeing as we go through this. These changes are elaborated in the next set of slides that I will be showing you coming up. The screens updated to support UCD export are the fees worksheet, closing cost worksheet, closing cost scenario templates, loan estimate, payoffs and adjustments, closing disclosure, the truth in lending, banker underwriting, Fannie Mae addendum, and document management. The Uniform Collateral Dataset Export screen was also added to facilitate the export of the UCD. Updates to the fees worksheet, closing cost worksheet, and closing cost scenario template are: we added a QM indicator, added a broker affiliate, lender affiliate to the paid to drop-down list, added optional checkboxes, reorganized drop-down list values for other fees, updated prepaid drop-down list options, and added pay-to affiliates calculation to closing costs and prepaid allocation. Now, the first one we're going to look at is the QM indicator. We actually added a column of checkboxes to indicate fees that are included in the QM total points and fees calculations. We added this because there's a field called total points and fees, and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac for UCD wants to know which of your closing fees were included in the QM calculation of total points and fees. Now, this field, the total points and fees, is a calculation that's performed by QM. It's either from, our QM button or any interface that you might use for QM results. The QM indicator that you see right here in the red is used to indicate which fees are included in the total points and fees. So you see what they were on the QM findings, and then you mark them here so that they match the QM findings, and then it goes over with the UCD. Broker and lender affiliates. We added broker affiliate and lender affiliate to the options for the paid to drop down list. These are two new options that are listed there, but they are needed for reporting purposes. What we also did was we added a paid to affiliates calculation in the closing costs and prepaid allocation section. So in other words, when you indicate the fees as a broker affiliate or lender affiliate, When you go over to the closing costs area, it has them all totaled under paid to affiliates. Optional fees. Added a column of optional checkboxes to section H, Other, to indicate whether the fee is optional. Now, TRID rules are that some fees in this section are optional, and with previous versions of Point, you had to type that in. So what we've done now is we've given you the ability to check the optional column, and when you do, the optional is appended to the fee on the printed loan estimate and closing disclosure. When this box is selected on the fees worksheet or closing costs worksheet respectively, it sits there, and when it prints optional next to it. Now, one thing to be aware of is on the older versions of Point prior to 9.6, the owner's title policy was always defaulted as optional, so you could not change it. So if you open an old loan in 9.6, we've actually set it to default the optional checkbox as checked. This is because the older versions, it was already marked as optional without the checkbox. So when you open the old loan, we don't want it changing, so it opens as optional. But this only applies to the owner's title insurance line, which you can see right here. When you open it, it's already going to have optional on it. 9.6, you have to mark it whether it's optional for it to show that way. Drop-down list values. We reorganized the list of fee types in section 8 of the Other. So we went in and we added things like condominium association dues and co-op association dues. Those were changed to association dues condo, association dues co-op, special assessment condo, special assessment co-op. Now, for some reason, in the next release, you will see the same thing for association dues HOA, special assessment HOA. For some reason, it didn't come out on this one, but it will be on the next one. Added the following options to the user-defined prepaid fees section. UCD wants to know specific fee items for property tax. So we added the different specific items that can be used. So in the pull down for user-defined prepaid fees, we've added the borough property tax, and of course there's city property tax, county property, district property, state property, town property, because they needed to know specifically what property tax, so we made those to match. The copy from liabilities button is one that we've been being asked for. This was enhanced to populate the screen with liabilities to be paid off from all co-borrowers. When you click the copy from button, it will copy liabilities from all borrowers, including co-borrowers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Previously, if you opened one and copied, it would erase the others. We fixed this by copying all payoffs from all borrower applications when clicking the copy button. So now then, let's look at the updates to the closing disclosure. We added a paid by column, replaced payoffs and payments field with drop-down list, added POC checkboxes, updated drop-down lists, and rearranged sections L and N. Payoffs and payments. We replaced the payoffs and payments field in section K, due from borrower at closing, with a drop-down list that contains types of payments and a field to enter the name of the entity being paid. So on the left you can see what 9.5 and earlier. On the right is version 9.6. So you can see there's a drop-down, a name, and amount. Updates to Section L, paid already by or on behalf of borrower at closing. So the payoff and payments field, we replace the payoffs and payments field with drop-down list to identify the type of payment and whether it is a closing adjustment or a liability. Adjustments drop-down, we replace the adjustments data entry fields with drop-down lists. Manual entry is also allowed. Then we added a POC checkbox to indicate whether the payment was made outside of the closing. And a paid by. Added a paid by column to indicate who paid the credit. These fields do not print on the CD form. They are simply used for collection purposes for UCD because Fannie Mae and LP, Freddie want to know additional information surrounding the closing disclosure data. Closing disclosure, payoff and payments, we enhance the copy from liabilities button functionality to populate the screen with liabilities of all paid off co-borrowers. We split the liability type field into two drop-down lists: liabilities and adjustments, type, closing adjustment, and liability. Right here. So is it a liability or is it an adjustment? And then what type? Was it a closing adjustment or a liability? Added paid by and paid by entity fields to indicate who made the closing adjustment and whether they are an individual or a legal entity, corporation, or business. Added a prepay penalty field to indicate the amount of the penalty when the liability has a prepayment penalty. On the truth in lending, we added the bank prime and COSI options to the index type and drop down list. So right here under the index type, you can now find bank prime and the COSI. We added a checkbox also to indicate that the buy down rate is on the note. Now, the ones I've seen done most of the time, the rate that's on the note is the actual rate. It doesn't show the buy down, but if the note does have the buy down, then you need to click here so that it will show. We added the allowable optional payments field that becomes enabled when optional payments are allowed. So here you have the allowable options. When you click optional payment, click yes, then the grayed out boxes and everything become available for you to type in and complete. Banker underwriting. Added DO and DU checkboxes that are automatically selected when the AUS findings are downloaded from Fannie Mae. If you do the automated underwriting from Fannie Mae, it will populate whether you did a DO, DU. It will also put in the run date, recommendation, and the case number. Now, if you don't have a case number and you go to upload this to UCD, then the UCD, when you upload it, will give you a case number UCD, which is different than a Fannie or Freddie case number. Added new document types in the closing category. When you upload the UCD, you export it, the user must attach the closing disclosures. So in order to do that, we added the closing disclosure alternative, closing disclosure borrower only, closing disclosure standard, as a type that you can put so it's easily identified for you to upload with the UCD. Now, with this being said, we have also added fields to indicate the method each borrower used to sign the documents and the date the document was signed. For example, the borrower, how did they sign it? Was it digital? Was it image? Was it text? Did they do a wet sign? And then you can enter the date that they signed. We added the Uniform Closing Disclosure UCD option to the Interfaces menu to export closing data in the UCD XML format. What you do is you go to the Interfaces, you click on the Uniform Closing Data Set, you would click on Add to specify which file to export, which gets back to what document. We add it. In this case, it was a Closing Disclosure Standard Description Closing Disclosure. Then we click the Export UCD XML button, and you follow the prompts. So, simple way, you go ahead and save the file to your desktop. Once it's saved to the desktop or what folder you want to put it in, then you will then be able to upload it in the Fannie site. If you upload it in the Fannie site and it does not have a Fannie case number, this is where it will give you the UCD case number, which you can then go back and type into the point file. HMDA updates. This added the loan application addendum to collect the government monitoring information. Now we added an option to the company defaults to specify that the loan application will print automatically with the loan application. So if you click Print Loan Application Addendum with the 1003, it will print this section with every 1003, and it will X out when selected. The government monitoring information on page 4 is crossed out on the printed loan application so that you're only completing it in the one spot. E-loan file. We added the refinance with same lender or affiliate checkbox to the additional loan data screen on the e-loan file menu to indicate the refinance is through the borrower's current lender. Track registration and rate lock. We added a date field and a lockbox to the registration and lock request section to indicate the date when the interest rate is updated. You click the lockbox to enable the date field for editing when the interest rate is changed. Like so. Track agent. We added license authority and authority URL fields to the lender, broker, real estate broker, buyer and seller, and closing agent to indicate the entity that issued the agent's license and their website. Added checkboxes in the seller section to indicate whether the property seller is an individual or a legal entity, business or corporation. Well, since we added one for you to check whether it's an individual or a legal entity, if it's a legal entity, then we added a legal entity field to enter the name when that option is selected right here. Now, some of the other fixes and enhancements. We resolved the improper rounding in the transfer taxes section E on page 2 of the loan estimate. Updated the project payments table on page 1 of the loan estimate to calculate rounded and unrounded values. Updated the point administrator to properly save and apply Point Central settings. Corrected the print issue on page 2 of the loan estimate to include negative days value and negative interest value calculations. Resolve the issue with escrow checkbox in section G, initial escrow payments at closing on the closing cost scenario template. Corrected the password protection issue that occurred when saving a single PDF form from the borrower forms dialog box, and then updated the Microsoft .NET Framework requirement to 4.6.2. That completes the overview. Of course, if you need assistance, you can call our dedicated customer service at 1-800-342-2599. And of course, you can email them at customerservice@calixsoftware.com. Sales and account management is 800-362-2599 or sales@calixsoftware.com. And always check out our website, www.calixsoftware.com. You can see what shows we're going to, get information about our user conference, and we post different information there, as well as different trainings and so forth can be found on that website. So I want to thank you again for attending the overview and look forward to speaking with anyone.